3.5 years ago, I was in my bed crying my eyes out. Half of my pillow was drenched in tears. And I was thinking to myself, I genuinely resent how my life feels. I hate it. I resented that I had superficial friendships around me. I resented the kind of relationship I had with my parents. I even resented the overgiving role that I somehow always found myself playing when it came to my love life. And for the cherry on top of the cake, I resented the fact that no matter how much I felt like I was trying my best to play by the rules, I somehow still ended up with the short end of the stick most of the time. Doesn't matter how much of my comfort I sacrificed for other people to feel comfortable. Rarely did I receive a fraction of the consideration and empathy that I so freely gave to others. So, while I was in my bed with tears running down my face, a blocked nose, and puffy eyes, I decided that this is the last day my empathy will ever be weaponized against me. The last day I shrink myself so other people can find me digestible because they can choke. If there is no equal give and take, then their comfort can burn to the ground for all I care. I took a dark, heartbreaking, and lonely time in my life where it felt like every single thing was stacked against me, and I used it to reinvent myself into an authentic, confident, and self-aware individual. And in this video, I'm sharing with you exactly how you can do the same thing for yourself using the specific 5-step framework that I used in my own life, the alignment code. Although I have to warn you, this system, this framework, the alignment code, it is not for you if you're looking for something surface level like take a walk and journal your feelings. It is a system that I guarantee you will give you real, long-lasting results, but only if you're willing to commit to the process of showing up for yourself. It is simple, but I can assure you it is not easy. Awareness. Observing exactly what your life is like right now while you're still under the influence of the subconscious programming you would like to change. This non-judgmental awareness helps us to do the following things. Recognize societal and family programming. Let me quickly share with you a personal example for this one. You and I both know that the first years of your life are extremely monumental in that they shape the perspective that you have on life. And for me, the first years were extremely monotonous. The same house I was born into is the same house I grew up in, and it's also the same environment where most of my life unfolded. Until I got to the age of 19 and I traveled to the UK for a couple of months, the culture shock smacked me in my face. I had such a limited perspective on life because of how monotonous most of my life had been. It was even a difficult thing for me to visualize growing out of those limitations I was born into, until I started to meet and cross paths with so many different types of individuals. I met people who had different cultures, different beliefs and backgrounds. And what it did is that it showed me there is a big world out there beyond the one that I've known for most of my life. And this was extremely important because the limitations I grew up in, I had already started to integrate them as part of my personality. So experiencing a completely different world is what helped me to mentally detach from those limitations. It made me realize there is actually a different side to life that I have never perceived previously because I've never actually experienced it. And now that I had moved away from the people, places, and things that would regularly remind me of my limitations, it started to become easier for me to visualize growing beyond those limitations. Living in a box makes you think that there is no other world outside of that box until you experience otherwise. The next thing is understanding people-pleasing and the fear of rejection. In many cases, becoming aware of the societal and family programming brings fear. The fear of going against the norm or going against the status quo of whatever environment we find ourselves in, and that being the reason we are rejected because now we are different from the people around us. For example, maybe you grew up in a very religious household, but now you feel more aligned with African spirituality. But you don't vocalize that, you don't embody it, because you fear the disapproval that might come as a result of doing that. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you grew up in a home that does not necessarily prioritize religious beliefs, but now you feel called to adopt your own religious systems, but you're afraid to be judged because of it. The funny thing about fear of rejection is that it can still be present even in situations that are out of our control. For example, growing up in financial struggle, where most of the time we only had enough for necessities, made me feel the need to overcompensate in my relationships with people who came from wealthier families. I had convinced myself that they would reject me if they found out about my life circumstances, and I allowed that belief to control how I show up in my relationships. I allowed it to make me feel like I need to prove myself. I always knew that I'm a very good listener, I'm good at giving advice, so that is what I amplified about myself, which led me to being the therapist friend, an emotional crutch for the people around me because I believed that is the only way for me to prove my value. But the thing about rejection is that it's inevitable. All of us experience it multiple times at different stages of our life. The key is to stop fearing it. It's normal. Think of how many things you yourself have rejected in your life, both big and small things. Rejection redirects you to what will accept you. Trust in the fact that if you know you've done your best for a person, a situation, or an opportunity, and you still faced rejection, then it was possibly not meant to be in your life to begin with. It's like being allergic to food. If you're allergic to one thing, you're probably not going to force yourself to eat it. Instead, you look for something else that you can tolerate, something that won't cause an allergic reaction for you. Next is differentiating between true desires versus conditioned desires. Now that you see the programs running your life, how do you tell the difference between what you truly want and what you've been conditioned to value? It begins by questioning your belief systems. Become curious about the things you believe. Where did this belief come from? Do I actually feel connected to what it represents, or am I holding on to it because the people around me have the same belief and I want their approval? For example, do I believe that the only way for me to build wealth for myself is through deception and taking advantage of other people, or is that just the societal narrative? Am I with this partner because I genuinely like them, or am I with them because the people around me say that this is the person I should be with? Do I genuinely enjoy being around the people I call friends? Or am I with them because we have a lot of history together and I just don't want to be alone? Honest self-reflection is what will bring you clarity. When I did this step for myself, I realized most of the limiting beliefs I was holding on to were not even my own beliefs. They were just repetitions of the things I had heard the people around me saying. I no longer believe that financial struggle makes me or anybody else less of a person. I no longer feel the need to overextend myself so I can prove my worth. But on the other side, I realized some of the beliefs that were passed down onto me ended up being in alignment with what I genuinely felt connected to. For example, becoming a mom. Some women value that, some women don't value it. I just happen to be one of the women that do value it. So I decided that is a belief I will continue to hold on to. And that's the beautiful thing about life. You have a choice. Just because majority of people go a certain path does not mean that you also have to do the same thing for yourself, especially if you know that that path does not necessarily align with what feels authentic to you. Step number 2 of the alignment code is healing. To understand why learning how to regulate your nervous system is important, we first have to understand the science behind emotional trauma and stress. The Adverse Childhood Experiences study, which had over 17,000 participants, showed that experiencing trauma such as abuse, neglect, or dysfunctional households between the ages of 0 to 17 has profound lifelong effects. It actually increases the risk of mental health issues as well as chronic diseases. Children experience both positive and negative stress. An example of positive stress is when they have to go to school for the first time and now they're meeting new people and learning how to socialize. An example of negative stress are the adverse childhood experiences we just talked about. Positive stress is good for children because it helps them to build healthy coping skills. On the other hand, negative stress from adverse childhood experiences trigger the nervous system and leave it in a chronic state of dysregulation. The prolonged stress negatively impacts key regions of the brain, specifically the ones responsible for paying attention, problem solving, emotion processing, and memory. What does this mean? A brain that was forced to learn how to survive in unpredictable or threatening environments has a difficult time functioning in ordinary, safe environments, which could lead to potentially misinterpreting social cues. For example, genuine people might feel threatening and dangerous people might feel familiar. However, the developing nervous system is also very responsive to cues of safety. When a caregiver provides a safe and nurturing environment, consistently helping the child to feel soothed, seen, and secure, it sends a signal to the nervous system saying the threat has passed. This allows the rest and digest system, as well as social engagement, to reassert itself, switching off the fight, flight, or freeze response and promoting nervous system regulation. A man named Bessel van der Kolk is a leading researcher and clinician in the field of trauma. His work emphasizes that trauma is not just a mental experience. Its effects become imprinted in the body, which disrupt emotion regulation as well as memory. Therapies like yoga, breathwork, and EMDR help to regulate the nervous system because they stimulate the vagus nerve, which connects the brain to the body. Something as simple as deep breathing can shift you from a state of hyperarousal to a state of calm. Yoga increases body awareness and also promotes relaxation. As someone who experienced childhood physical and sexual abuse, believe me when I tell you that yoga and breathwork have been extremely life-changing when it comes to healing my nervous system, especially because a lot of my healing had to be self-led because I didn't have the money to consistently access therapy. These are the practices that enhanced my body awareness, helping me to recognize early signs of dysregulation and reminding me that I can choose to self-regulate. They also helped me to integrate my traumatic experience into the larger narrative of my life, acknowledging and making peace with the past while creating safety in the present moment. Because yes, it happened, but it's not happening anymore right now. There is a hard pill I am about to share with you, but as much as it's a difficult one to swallow, it's also an important one to make peace with. Understand that others may not validate your past pain, especially if it was long ago, whether that is a couple of days, weeks, or years ago. They might want you to ignore it, to sweep it under the rug and just pretend like it never happened. But listen, avoidance might be convenient for the people around you, but it will never be convenient for you. Because you're not healing so other people can experience the benefits. You're healing so you can be able to consciously create a life that is based off of your own terms and conditions and not the terms and conditions of your traumatic experience. As long as we avoid healing, the effects are subconsciously running our lives, which science has already proven. Processing your trauma builds resilience and also improves emotional management. As I said earlier, yoga and breathwork are extremely powerful, and my own journey with them is proof of that. However, if they don't appeal to you, do your research. Explore other activities that you feel more inclined to try out, something that you can build a consistent routine with. Committing to even just 5 minutes a day can make such a huge difference. Or maybe you can decide to do 20 minutes for 3 or 4 days in a week. Just create a routine that works for you and your schedule. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just has to be consistent. It has to be regular. And the beautiful thing about these practices is that the effects are cumulative. They pile up. You might not feel a difference immediately after one practice, but one day, a year will have passed and the change will be undeniable. Remember what I said at the beginning of the video. I guarantee you that this is a system that will give you real, long-lasting results, but only if you're willing to commit to the process of showing up for yourself. Step number 3 of the alignment code, boundaries. Steps 1 and 2 build a strong foundation for your authenticity to thrive. Now, let's talk about how to protect that foundation from anyone who tries to come in and destroy it, whether they do it intentionally or not. Effective boundaries maintain the safe environment that your true self needs to thrive. They protect you from energy-draining people, places, and things that distract you from your personal growth. Energy vampires are real and protection is essential. Now let's talk about how to set boundaries without feeling guilty. The thing that worked for me was channeling the resentment from past pain and also understanding that it's a consistent process. Guilt is not going to vanish overnight. I often used to support friends without being asked, only for them to be absent when it was me who needed the support. Not all my friendships were like that, but many of them were like that. And listen, I believe in communicating your needs and giving people a chance to show up for you. But in some cases, even after I clearly communicated what I needed, the support I received afterwards was evidently superficial. So I changed how I showed up for them. I decided to limit how much access people had to me. This is when I started to understand that not everybody deserves to be called a friend. Some people are just good acquaintances, and some are even better off as strangers, and that's okay. And how I show up for someone I consider a friend is not the same way I show up for someone I consider a good acquaintance. Giving more than I receive is a dynamic I decided I am no longer engaging in, whether the other person is happy about it or not. When people are used to receiving your energy without having to do anything to reciprocate it or maintain it, they might resist or maybe even become a bit hostile when you choose to withdraw it. They might try to make you doubt yourself. You're making a big deal out of nothing. They might even try to lower your self-esteem. You'll never find someone like me. Nobody is going to tolerate you in the same way I have tolerated you. All of that is just an attempt to control you, so they can keep you in an imbalanced power dynamic that you struggle to see your way out of. Ignore them and focus on yourself, because someone who weaponizes your feelings or doesn't value your presence also does not deserve to have access to your energy. And I know that letting them go might feel like a loss at first, but it's actually a win in disguise. You just might not be able to see it in the moment. It's important to understand if someone is intentionally or unintentionally crossing your boundaries, because that is what will determine how you respond. Communicate when something bothers you. Give people a chance to adjust. I'm a very big supporter of that, because I know one day it will be me who has crossed the boundaries of someone I care about, and I would want them to let me know and to give me the chance to show up for them. However, some actions are clearly intentional. Remember that you are the one who defines what is a negotiable and what is a non-negotiable boundary for you based on your unique life experiences. If you grew up in a home where there was so much name calling and yelling during disagreements, which made the environment around you as a child extremely hostile, you might become an adult whose non-negotiable boundary is no yelling and no name calling during disagreements, because you don't want to continue the cycle of hostility. Someone who did not grow up in a similar environment might not necessarily understand why that boundary is a non-negotiable boundary for you. So maybe they might keep crossing it. That does not mean that you should consistently compromise that boundary for them. Take it as a sign of incompatibility between the two of you, because you know why you have that boundary. You understand that you have it there so that it can protect you. It's not your job to plead with someone for them to understand where you're coming from. As much as our boundaries are personalized, consciously recognizing when a boundary has been crossed is important, whether it was intentional or not. If you're going to forgive someone, you may as well do it with open eyes. Respectfully address the situation without sugarcoating, understand it, and act accordingly. Now let's talk about the role of boundaries in personal power and authenticity. Let's think of countries with borders and rules for entry. A country with no borders would be extremely chaotic. Anybody and everybody can come and go as they please, including people with malicious intentions. A country with exceedingly tight borders blocks everybody out, including people who are coming in to bring positive influence. A country with effective borders has rules and regulations that help to filter out the people who are in alignment with their belief systems and values, allow those people to come in, and keep the rest out. Our boundaries are pretty much the same thing. Effective boundaries keep you open to genuine connection while simultaneously protecting you from anyone who might be coming in with malicious intentions or any kind of deception, which allows you to connect with people who are aligned to your authentic self. Step number 4 of the alignment code: alignment. With strong boundaries in place, making sure that you have a safe environment for your true self to grow, you can now begin to design a lifestyle based on your personal values using the habits we have cultivated with the first 3 steps. This 4th step is the one that builds the momentum to disconnect from the old and to reinforce the new. This involves applying awareness, emotional regulation, and the boundary setting you've established. I used to lie to people about where I live because I never wanted anyone to even dare to ask if they can come to visit or to even know the area. But I stopped lying about it because I realized lying about it is simply me allowing the fear of rejection and the shame to continue controlling me. It's important for us to remember that breaking free from these deeply ingrained patterns requires conscious effort and conscious repetition. At the beginning, there will definitely be some resistance. You'll definitely feel some hesitation, some discomfort as you actively choose new responses that align with your new values. When we go back to my example of how I stopped lying, even then, I knew that some people would still be judgmental in some way, but I made peace with that. Because I realized I can choose to disengage from them because setting effective boundaries is about controlling your own behavior, not controlling the other person's behavior. So instead of saying to someone, you need to stop doing this and that to me, I say to them and to myself, I don't stay in relationships or situations where this kind of behavior is happening. There is always a price to be paid for leaving behind an old reality. Something has to come to an end for something else to begin. Some things must crumble as you leave behind the old limiting subconscious programming. And if they genuinely belong in your life, they will align with the version of yourself that you are evolving into, and they will be rebuilt in your new reality. If they don't align with your authentic self, they will remain in the past, and that is okay. The inner peace that you feel from prioritizing your authenticity is unmatched. I would not replace the genuine, authentic connections that I'm building in my life right now with the ones where I used to just be the therapist friend of the dynamic. This is about learning from your intuition, learning how to trust it. When you're faced with a tough decision, regulate your emotions using one of the regulation practices we covered in step 2, or maybe one of your own that you discovered for yourself, and then listen to what your gut is saying, because that regulation is what will give you the clarity to actually hear your intuition. Observe the outcome you get when you've listened to your intuition as compared to the outcome you get when you've just made an impulsive decision. The more you see positive results from regulated intuitive choices, the more you will trust the process. Personal experience strengthens your belief. Other people's experiences can be helpful to listen to. You might learn one or two things, but your own experience is essential for true confidence in your new beliefs and values. The fifth and final step of the alignment code is embodiment, fully integrating your aligned self into your daily life. Let me just be straightforward with you on this one. Listening to your intuition is often followed by a moment of self-doubt. For example, let's say you cut off a toxic person, and then they start spreading rumors about you, they try to ruin your reputation, and now you even feel isolated because you feel like everybody around you is talking about you. This might tempt you to believe that you were wrong about your decision and you should change your mind. And if you do, you end up finding yourself in the exact same situation a few months later, facing the exact same toxic cycles. But what if you just let the chaos pass? What if you don't let the pressure make you doubt your intuitive decision? Aren't you going to be grateful that you finally ended an emotionally draining cycle? Or maybe you feel called to make a career shift so you can start doing something that feels more fulfilling to you as compared to your current path. Then the first few months are challenging before you actually get on your feet and you start wondering, why does this feel so difficult? What if I made a mistake? But something about it just feels right, Something is telling you just stick to your decision because the beginning might need some adjustment, but you will definitely gain stability. The nervous system regulation skills we covered in step 2 are extremely important in this stage, because emotional regulation happens on both a small and a large scale. Whether it's a 10-minute conversation that is quite uncomfortable because you're setting a boundary, or maybe you're navigating grief over days, weeks, or maybe even years. I remember when my conscious mind first started processing my trauma, I grieved for a long time. And at first, I didn't even understand it. But over time, as I allowed my grief to just be instead of trying to suppress it, I realized I was grieving the part of my childhood that was taken away from me and that I will never be able to get back. Reconnecting with habits and things that I genuinely enjoyed doing during that time of my life is how I gradually started reintegrating that part of me that had been shut away for so long. Consistent emotional regulation through yoga and breathwork is what helped me to continue functioning in my everyday life while still processing the pain and grief of that experience. Let me be honest with you. I used resentment and spite from past pain as motivation to start building self discipline. And then, once I used those emotions as a tool to push me so I can get moving, I would reframe the narrative around my discipline. I would replace the spite with appreciation for myself for showing up. I would also recognize and acknowledge to myself the benefits I feel after showing up. So, as much as it started with resentment and spite, I would finish off by saying, wow, I feel so refreshed after that yoga session, or I feel much more clear headed after my breath work. Acknowledging these positive outcomes is so important because that is what helps you make the shift from doing it to prove other people wrong to doing it for yourself. Spite can be the initial spark, like the way you pull a generator cord when you want to get it moving, but personal connection is the fuel that keeps you running. Eventually, in my experience, the spite fades and it becomes replaced by the love for the process of self care. Your emotions are tools. Don't let them drain you. Don't let them define you. Use them as fuel for different phases of your life. Go forth and be yourself. Let me share with you a mantra that I hold very close to my heart. If I desire something and I know my heart is in the right place, I'm not intentionally trying to cause harm. I'm doing it, regardless of others' opinions. There will be multiple situations where your heart desires something that kind of goes against the status quo. I've experienced multiple situations like this, and I know many more are coming. Trust in your intentions. Consult your mind, consult your logic, but also listen to your heart. When it comes to certain things like intuition or like understanding the universe, you can't purely depend on logic. Some of these things have to be felt. Surviving on logic and facts alone puts the mind in a position to be easily controlled by external influences using manipulation and misinformation. The goal is to balance being a dreamer and a realist. The dreamer side of you is what reminds you of your heart's desires and the fact that you have the ability to achieve them. The realist side of you is what helps you to create a practical plan to actually achieve those desires. The dreamer side of you and the realist side of you work better when they are on the same team. So, just like I shared with you my story at the beginning of the video, I would love to hear yours in the comment section. Of course, only if you're comfortable with that. You can also share what is one step you're willing to take this week to align with your authentic self. It can be as big or as small as you want it to be, as long as it is something you know you can genuinely commit to. Or let me know which part of our journey through the alignment code resonated with you the most. From gaining awareness of our conditioning to healing our nervous system and emotions, setting healthy boundaries, creating an aligned life, and finally, embodiment of that life. If you found this video helpful in any way, don't be shy. Hit the like button so I can know to make more content like this. Let's build a community that supports each other to break free from limiting subconscious beliefs and create lives based on self-awareness, a regulated nervous system, and inner power. You can also check out my Instagram and TikTok for regular actionable insights and steps on how to build an authentic, aligned life. If you want to dive deeper into the alignment code, subscribe and hit the notification bell because I will be putting out videos to address each individual step and all the nuances that the steps come with. For example, how to adjust in step 1 if making a drastic location change is not doable for you right now. We will also look at alternative emotional regulation tools for step 2 if yoga and breathwork don't necessarily appeal to you, and even how to set effective boundaries in relationships that naturally have an imbalanced power dynamic, for example, with your parents or your bosses. That is in step 3's video. Anyway, let me not get ahead of myself. If you've watched until this point, I want you to know that I appreciate you. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.